Hi, my name is Zaunscherb. I am the chair of the board of directors of Critical Elements Lithium. I'm sure you've heard it before. Every company believes that they are fully undervalued and the market should be appreciating what they've got more. I'd like to tell you why I believe that Critical Elements is indeed undervalued and should be worthy of your attention. First off, basic shares outstanding, 232 million. This is a company that's been actively exploring and advancing the Rose Lithium hard rock project in Quebec for a number of years, from discovery in 2008, 2009, and yet has maintained a very good capital structure with 232 million shares outstanding. As you can see, it's trading in a 33 cent to 58 cent range very consistently, has good coverage from across the street, and decent 4% exposure for insiders on the management structure. The Rose Lithium-Tantalum project is wholly owned by the company. There are no options or payments or debts. It's one of the top jurisdictions globally in Quebec. Quebec is recognized as one of the top jurisdictions because of its policies, an extremely clean grid with 98% hydropower and the rest renewable. The company has a formalized agreement with the Cree and has all major environmental permits. We're not waiting for a permit from Quebec or from the federal government. That's all in place already. 2023, there's a feasibility study that was done at just over 2,100 US life of mine average per ton for 5% chemical grade spodumene. And that studied a mine and production of 200,000 tons per annum of spodumene concentrate. And that delivered a very robust NPV 8% of US $2.2 billion, internal rate of return of around 66%, and a payback of 1.8. Now, that price that was used in that feasibility study is exceeded by today's spot price of $2,500 per ton US for 6% chemical grade, and that's up 4 times since June of last year.
Right, and I mean, just say, if I may interrupt briefly, clearly, the feasibility study lays out quite a big project, quite a good returns as well. Where's the kind of misalignment in terms of what people's perception of what you've got or what they think you could do? Is it simply come down to the kind of financing uncertainty around this, or is it really the kind of legacy of what happened with lithium over the last 3-4 years?
I think it's a combination of things. So, of course, lithium came off quite dramatically, and so people are just discovering now that that spodumene is up on fourfold. So it's an amazing thing. When I tell people that, they weren't aware of that happening. There's still this sense, especially in North America, that the EV theme is dead, given the Trump administration removing subsidies, things like that. But the reality is that across the world, EV penetration into the auto market is up dramatically. And that's true whether we're talking about Europe or China. In China, the export sales are up dramatically, selling all around the world EVs, not just battery electric vehicles, but also plug-in hybrids. So it's quite a strong theme that's only getting stronger. And this downturn that we've had in spodumene pricing, in lithium pricing, all it's done is delayed projects and made it so that the supply deficit gap is going to be that much larger.
But talk to me about the supply deficit, because if you what markets would spodumene feed into? Because if you look at the kind of the EV production numbers, do they still stack up? And so two-part question is there an imperative on advanced lithium projects to actually get into production, first mover advantage, and all of that? Because last time we just saw a huge amount of companies just swamping the market. Everyone felt of sensory overload with the amount of information that was being in there. I didn't quite know where to look. How do you take advantage of this market as it now stands?
Yes, I think what we've seen now since the price of spodumene and lithium in general has started to move, it's because it's a combination of factors. It's the delay of new production that occurred because of the low price. We also have seen people move into the actual producers right now, which makes normal sense. We see that in every commodity. So the Albemarles of the world, SQMs of the world have been the first movers, and now people are coming down market looking at the developers and potentially explorers. So we were swamped by all the information from explorers, and we saw out of the last cycle some magnificent world-class discoveries. If we're looking at hard rock in Quebec, PMET and Q2 have done a superb job in identifying outstanding, large, high-grade projects. However, this one is somewhat different. Although there's a massive exploration program going on to expand the resource, it is also first in the queue. It is shovel-ready. It has its permitting. It has its agreement with the Cree in place. And so that's what makes this quite a unique story. And coming back to your original question, right now it's a matter of putting together the funding. The funding that will allow the company to make a final investment decision. And it's always an interesting point in the commodity cycle when you see companies waiting at that point. And we'll get into that, the Lassonde curve and what that means. Looking at the project, we're talking about the James Bay region, where the Nemaska mine, the James Bay project, the Sayonus project are all in that part of northern Quebec, in amongst the Iuiski, the Cree territory. We have made a new discovery. And so right beside the road is the Rose project, which is the subject of the feasibility studies. But we've also made a new discovery called Rose West, which is less than 10 kilometers to the west of Rose. And that's the subject of our drill program, where we've commenced a 10,000 meter summer drill program that began a couple of weeks ago, and we'll be generating all kinds of news flow over the next few months. Now, Rose West, relative to its discovery in 2024, our spring drill program has already expanded that footprint by over 6 times. So there will be a dramatic increase in the resource update to come following this particular drill program. And what's also kind of unique is the mineralization at both Rose and Rose West is relatively flat-lying. These are stacked on echelon pegmatites. So when somebody else in the region drills on a near vertical, every hole has to get progressively deeper and longer in order to extend that mineralization. For us, these are shallow. You're just plunking along on a relatively horizontal thing. And so it's a much more efficient outcome from a drill program perspective, and therefore your cost per ton discovered is dramatically lower. So we're quite excited about seeing that being brought into the resource.
So that will come into the resource. You're saying similar in terms of geology, and this is not to be seen as a kind of a standalone project. It's a satellite to the main Rose project.
Correct. And so would not have to go through the full permitting process as a standalone project. Rose West, one would be able to incorporate that in an amendment to the existing Rose permitting. So that cuts your timelines down dramatically.
Right. And obviously, are you saying with this drilling that you're doing at Rose West, that will come into the up-and-coming resource update? Are you looking for it to materially change the project economics? Does it need to materially change because the project seems big enough at the moment for the market to be excited. Basically, it's like, what's the best use of your current capital? I know you've been waiting around for permits and so forth, and maybe the market to change, but right now, is this the best use of your time, money, and efforts?
Well, we have, as I said, a feasibility for the Rose project. And so your first order approximation is to think of taking these new tons and dropping them at the end of the mine life for Rose, which is discounted massively to many, many years down the road. That's not what's going to happen. In my opinion, what we'll see is that one would initiate production with Rose and then bring in the material from Rose West, call it years 4 or 5, 3 or 6, whatever, early on in the mine plan to allow for an expansion of the combined entity. And that has a dramatic impact on your NPV.
Okay, so that it's about adding tons. It's not necessarily about improving grade, because the geology is the same, and it's not necessarily about, extending mine life as far as the message to the market now. So this will be a bigger project, and bigger is better.
Indeed. And in terms of the grade, it's too early to say in terms of, I don't want to speak ahead of a resource update, but it looks like the average grade at Rose West is actually higher than the average grade at Rose. But remains to be proven in drilling and through the resource update. That's Rose. Rose is this collection of concessions up in the north. But then you see to the south, we also have quite an extensive land package over what's called the Nemaska Break. And these breaks are large structural features. We have over 100 kilometers of that highly prospective ground with many high priority targets to be drilled on that. Now, within that, you could see that orange property. That orange property is the NISC joint venture. The NISC joint venture, that property was optioned to a company called Power Metallic, PNPN, and Power Metallic went on to earn an 80% interest in the NISC joint venture, but it also made a rather attractive discovery, a polymetallic discovery called the Lion Zone, on which the Power Metallic is now drilling quite aggressively. So now we own a 20% interest that is carried in the NISC joint venture until the delivery of a feasibility study, and we own just under 10 million shares of Power Metallic. And if you look at it, with Power Metallic currently trading where it is, that's almost a $300 million market cap in Power Metallic, and we own approximately 1/4 of the value of that project, as well as those shares. So I would suggest to you that we see a lot of value in our exposure to Power Metallic, leaving a $2.2 billion lithium project almost as a free option, a very inexpensive option on lithium. To me, that's an extremely valuable package.
And obviously, like, I guess you were saying optionality, but once the JV reaches feasibility, you've got some choices to make.
Yes.
Presumably.
Yes.
Right. Have you got a sense of what's the timing on that?
Oh, that's entirely up to Power Metallic, so we'll see what their intent is. But over the meantime, we have that exposure and we have that option that we can choose to participate at that point in time or be diluted down. So let's look at just from an enterprise value per ton basis. Here we are trading at a 68% discount to the mean of its peers, looking at the 2P reserves. Or if you prefer looking at M+I resources, we're trading at a 56% discount to the mean of our peers. So from our perspective, there's a re-rating that's required to happen. But of course, the market is waiting to see how in the world are we going to finance this project going forward. In terms of the analysts currently covering it, there are 3 that are actively commenting about the company. They all have a speculative buy rating. The targets range from 85 to $1.20, and we're sitting currently around 37 cents. So the average target's $1. On average, they're looking at us trading at a 0.37 times NAV per share, and that's before considering that Power Metallic interest. And so there's about an 18% discount to the market at this point in time from that NAV per share perspective.
Right. And so, which is, sorry to interrupt again, but in terms of how I look at this from a comp perspective, because it's been a very difficult market for lithium companies, you know, who do you look like? Who should we compare yourself to? And should it be a lithium company?
I think it's fair to compare against the lithium companies. If you were comparing against a precious metal company, precious metals have already had a very, very strong market. If you want to look at a base metal company, sure. But I prefer to look at making a like-for-like comparison. Who's out there? I mean, you look at, as again, those world-class discoveries, things like PMET and Q2 have made excellent discoveries. I suggest that they're going to be many years away from cash flow. We have the advantage of full permitting and full agreement with the Cree. Those are very time-consuming things that need to happen. Other companies like Frontier in Ontario have done a great job as well. Very nice grades, very attractive product. It also are challenged from an infrastructure perspective, and it's great to see the Ontario government supporting infrastructure development. Critical Elements Rose is literally right beside a road and literally under a power line that we have already permitted for a movement. So the infrastructure for us is definitely an advantage, as is the stage of permitting. So I understand why we're in a bit of a discount, because we're waiting to fund this project. But once funded, it will be particularly attractive.
And going back to your point with regards to Power Metallic, you know, obviously it looks like the analysts aren't including that interest in their NAV calculations. Do when do you suspect that they will be in a position to start including that in how they value you?
Having been an analyst for 30 years, I understand the time constraints on an analyst and the simple way things get looked at. At some point in time, institutional investors will go, wait a minute, you didn't include the value of that project that is now worth almost $300 million. So there'll be some pushback to those valuations, whether that happens next week or next month, who knows? But at some point in time, it will be included.
Okay. Fair. I guess as EU advance on other fronts, perhaps that may come to light as they start looking a bit more deeply. Okay.
So we talked about the Lassonde curve briefly. So where is Critical Elements right now? Well, you could argue with the Rose project, we're in the deep abyss there, post-feasibility study looking for money. And then that's a great entry point, usually when the institutions get involved and we see the rise towards first cash flow. So that's in the Lassonde curve a classic. However, there's a bit of an additional thing to take into account here, and that is exploration. So having just embarked on our summer drill program, I would suggest to you that there's a significant chance that Rose West will be expanded. And later on this year, when we do some drilling on the Nemaska Break, we have our exploration manager is the same gentleman that participated in the Lion discovery that we picked up from Power Metallic. So he knows where to look. And he's been generating those targets for Nemaska Break exploration, which we hope to put a drill into later on this year. So 2 fronts, expansion of Rose West and Nemaska Break discovery. So we're quite excited about that potential. And that should put us in the Lassonde curve a little bit earlier in that as we see the advancement of exploration and drilling.
Okay. And so do you think currently I get the Rose West expansion is great drilling, but the kind of pure play exploration with Nemaska Break, etc. Do you think that's being valued at the moment, or is that to come?
I think it's to come. When I talk to people, they're very excited about the Power Metallic exposure and the idea of getting a free or inexpensive option on lithium. There are other people that are focused entirely on lithium, and they don't consider there much value on the exploration side, but they do like the idea of seeing Rose West expanded and seeing that material incorporated into future production.
Right, and just with Nemaska Break, obviously, depending on what you find, again, does that give you cause for thought at that point? Should you also find some sort of polymetallic type discovery, because that makes the story quite confusing in some ways.
It does. Of course, at that point in time, we'll have to consider things like spinning off the property and creating a polymetallic spin-out company. All those things are options for the future we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, if we're so fortunate as to make a polymetallic discovery.
Wow, polymetallic 2.0. What's wrong with that? Okay, there you go. Okay, well, sorry, and have you got more?
I think that's the primary story. We have a great team. Jean-Sébastien Lavallee is superb as a CEO, has done a great job in advancing this company. He and his father were the original discoverers in around 2008, 2009. I mentioned that it's been extremely conservatively managed. We've maintained that market cap structure for quite a few years now without getting caught in some of the downturn, some of the unfortunate things that happened through the downturn of lithium pricing as people overextended. Stefan Haber, he is the president of the company. He and his partner Marcus Brune were instrumental in building Rockwood Lithium, which became Albemarle's lithium division. So they have an extremely strong understanding of the lithium market. That company was sold for $6.2 billion. So we're quite excited about the management group that we have in place and what we can do with it, given this project, this high quality project.